Welcome to Long Story Spoken.
Long stories, spoken simply.
Welcome back to Long Story Spoken, everyone. I'm your host, George, and as always, I'm thrilled to be joined by our resident book enthusiast, Jessica. How are you doing today, Jess?
I'm doing great, George. Excited to dive into another classic with you. We're stepping away from productivity habits for a bit, but still very much in the self-improvement realm.
Absolutely. And before we jump into today's incredible book, I just want to give a quick shout out. If you're enjoying our discussions and want to explore the books we talk about, make sure to check the description below for links to purchase them. It really helps support the show.
Every little bit helps. Today, we're talking about a book that practically defines the self-help genre, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
It's a title that says it all, isn't it? Published way back in 1936, but honestly, its principles feel as relevant today as ever. For those who might not know, Dale Carnegie himself was a pioneer in developing personal business skills, self-confidence, and motivational techniques. His books have sold tens of millions worldwide.
And for good reason. This isn't just about being nice or manipulative. It's fundamentally about understanding human nature and building genuine connections. Carnegie really emphasizes that dealing with people is probably the biggest problem we face, whether in business or our personal lives. He even cites research saying that 85% of financial success comes from skill in human engineering, not just technical knowledge.
That's a huge statistic. It really puts into perspective how vital these soft skills are. So, Jess, where do we start with this foundational text?
Carnegie breaks the book down into 4 main parts, and it's a brilliant flow. Let's kick things off with part 1, Fundamental Techniques in Handling People.
All right, part 1. Fundamental techniques in handling people. Sounds like the basic building blocks. What's the first principle, Jess?
The very first and perhaps most crucial is don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
That feels almost counterintuitive sometimes, doesn't it? When someone messes up, our first instinct is often to point it out.
Exactly. But Carnegie provides some really striking examples. He talks about figures like Two-Gun Crowley, a notorious criminal, who, even as police were firing into his apartment, wrote a letter saying, "Under my coat is a weary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm." And even Al Capone, America's most notorious public enemy, saw himself as a public benefactor.
Wow. So, these hardened criminals, even they didn't see themselves as bad. They justified their actions.
Right. And the point is, if even criminals don't blame themselves, how much less do normal people respond well to criticism? It doesn't make people change. It just puts them on the defensive, and often makes them resent you.
So instead of criticism, what's the alternative?
That leads us to principle 2. Give honest and sincere appreciation. This isn't about flattery. It's about genuine praise. Everyone craves appreciation and a feeling of importance.
I can definitely relate to that. A sincere good job feels so much better than a forced compliment.
Carnegie shares a story about a man who sharply altered his philosophy after reading the book. He used to drive, criticize, and condemn his 314 employees. After applying the principles of appreciation, he said, "When I used to walk through my establishment, no one greeted me. But now they are all my friends, and even the janitor calls me by my first name." His organization gained new loyalty and enthusiasm.
That's powerful. It shows the real-world impact of shifting from a negative to a positive approach. What's the third fundamental technique?
Principle 3. Arouse in the other person an eager want. Carnegie says, "He who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way." It means instead of telling people what you want, show them how they can get what they want by doing what you suggest.
So, it's about understanding their desires and aligning your goals with theirs.
Exactly. He gives an example of his son, Rennie, who was supposed to eat cereal but didn't want to. Instead of forcing him, Carnegie's wife made it into a game, letting Rennie choose which cereal to eat and feel important in the process. He ate 2 helpings happily because he was interested and felt important. The underlying idea is that self-expression is a dominant human necessity. If we let others cook and stir the idea themselves, they will like it and make it their own.
So, it's not about manipulation, but about empathy and understanding what truly motivates people. It's like, instead of saying, "You need to finish this report by Friday," you could say, "If we get this report done by Friday, it will free up your weekend, and we'll be ahead for the next project."
Precisely. It's about finding the common ground and showing mutual benefit. That wraps up part 1. These 3 principles are a fantastic starting point for changing how we interact with others. Moving on to part 2, 6 ways to make people like you. If part 1 is about handling people without causing friction, this part is about actively building positive relationships.
This sounds like something everyone wants to master. What's the first way?
Principle 1. Become genuinely interested in other people. This goes beyond just being polite. It means truly caring about what makes them tick.
That makes sense. We all love talking about ourselves, don't we?
Carnegie points out that in 500 telephone conversations, the personal pronoun I was used 3,900 times. And when you look at a group photo, whose picture do you look for first? Yours. This highlights our inherent self-interest. So if you want friends, don't try to impress people or get them interested in you. Instead, be genuinely interested in them. He shares the story of an old doctor in New York who was deeply interested in his patients, even sending personal letters and going out of his way to help them, and they adored him for it.
So, it's about shifting the focus from ourselves to others. What's the next principle?
Principle 2, smile. It sounds simple, but a genuine smile is incredibly powerful. It says, "I like you. I'm glad to see you."
It's universal, isn't it? A smile can bridge any language barrier.
Carnegie mentions a sales representative who started smiling more and genuinely liking people. His sales soared. He gives an example of a successful businessman who told Carnegie that he made it a point to smile at everyone he met, even strangers on the street. He found it made him happier and improved his interactions. Even when he didn't feel like smiling, he forced himself, and it often lifted his spirits.
Force yourself to smile, and you might actually start feeling happier. I've heard that before, it's true.
Principle 3. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language.
This is a big one. It makes people feel seen and valued.
Exactly. Carnegie talks about how Jim Farley, who played a huge role in Franklin D. Roosevelt's political success, made it a point to remember the first names of thousands of people. He believed that remembering and using a person's name was a secret to success. When you remember someone's name, it makes them feel important and appreciated, showing you genuinely care enough to remember them.
That's so true. When someone remembers your name, especially after a long time, it makes a huge impression. What's the fourth principle?
Principle 4. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. People often fail to make a favorable impression because they're too concerned with what they're going to say next.
We've all been in conversations like that, where you can tell the other person is just waiting for their turn to speak.
The Reader's Digest once said, "Many persons call a doctor when all they want is an audience." Even Abraham Lincoln, during the Civil War, would invite old friends to Washington just to talk for hours about his problems, not asking for advice, but just needing a sympathetic listener to unburden himself. That's what we all want sometimes.
That's a profound insight. Sometimes people just need to be heard. What's number 5?
Principle 5. Talk in terms of the other person's interests. Find out what they're passionate about and discuss that.
That ties back to being genuinely interested, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Carnegie shares a story about how he interviewed a man named Edward Bach, a famous editor. Instead of talking about himself, Carnegie prepared by learning about Bach's interests and accomplishments. When they met, he asked Bach about his specific interests, and Bach spoke for hours. This made a great impression. Another example is a salesman who sold sugar and found out a particular baker was interested in his children. He spent time genuinely talking to the baker about his kids, and the baker ended up giving him a bigger order.
It's about making the conversation relevant and enjoyable for them. And finally, the sixth way.
Principle 6, make the other person feel important, and do it sincerely. As William James said, the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated.
This loops back to appreciation, but with an emphasis on making someone feel significant.
Carnegie provides an example of a new teacher who dealt with a troublesome student named Tommy. Instead of reprimanding him, she told him she heard he was a natural leader and was depending on him to make the class the best. She complimented everything he did, and Tommy transformed. Another instance is a restaurant owner whose longtime employee, Paulette, resigned. Instead of just accepting it, he told her how much she meant to him and the company, even repeating it in front of the staff and his family. Paulette withdrew her resignation and became more reliable than ever.
So, it's about building people up, not tearing them down. These 6 principles really offer a roadmap for building strong, positive relationships. Okay, Jessica, we've covered handling people and making them like us. Now, let's get into part 3, how to win people to your way of thinking. This sounds like where the influence aspect really comes into play.
It definitely does, George. And the first principle is perhaps one of the most challenging for many. You can't win an argument.
That's a tough pill to swallow. Our natural inclination is often to prove we're right.
Carnegie argues that in an argument, you almost never truly win. If you lose, you lose. And if you win, you still lose, because you've made the other person feel inferior, hurt their pride, and they'll resent your triumph. A man named Fred Clark, a salesman, shares how he used to argue with customers, especially about their purchases, and often lost the sale. He realized that arguing only made him lose business and goodwill. He stopped arguing and instead focused on understanding and agreeing with customers, which led to improved sales. He advises, if you are going to prove anything, don't let anybody know it.
So, avoid arguments at all costs, even if you're technically correct. What's next?
Principle 2. A sure way of making enemies and how to avoid it. It's about never telling people they are wrong directly.
That also makes sense. No one likes to be told they're wrong.
Carnegie explains that when you tell someone they are wrong, you strike a direct blow at their intelligence, judgment, and pride, and they will resent it. Instead, approach disagreements with tact. For instance, if someone makes a statement you disagree with, you could say, well, now look, I think differently, but I may be wrong. I often am. And if I am wrong, I want to be put right. This disarms them.
That's very clever. It opens the door for discussion rather than shutting it down. What's the third principle?
Principle 3. If you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. This is liberating and surprisingly effective. When you admit your own mistakes, it takes the wind out of your accuser's sails.
It shows humility and integrity, which are very disarming qualities.
Carnegie shares a personal anecdote about walking his Boston Bull Terrier without a leash, which was against the rules. When a mounted policeman started scolding him, Carnegie immediately admitted his fault and said he was truly sorry. The policeman's attitude completely changed from condemnation to understanding and even friendliness. The officer went from scolding to actually telling him it was all right, essentially winning the policeman over by admitting his fault.
That's a great example of how it can defuse a tense situation. Number 4?
Principle 4, a drop of honey. This refers to starting in a friendly way.
So, if you want to influence someone, approach them with warmth rather than hostility.
Exactly. Carnegie tells the story of Abraham Lincoln, who famously said, "A drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall." Lincoln used this principle throughout his career. Carnegie also recounts how he successfully negotiated a lower rent for his courses by approaching the hotel manager in a friendly manner, highlighting their mutual interests and the benefits the courses brought to the hotel, rather than demanding a price reduction. He emphasized how his lectures attracted cultured people and were good advertising for the hotel.
So, it's about finding common ground and building rapport from the start. What about the fifth principle?
Principle 5. The secret of Socrates. This is about getting the other person to say yes, yes immediately.
The Socratic method. Lead them to your conclusion with a series of agreements.
Right. When a person says no, their pride makes them stick to it, even if they later realize it was ill-advised. So, skillful speakers get a number of yes responses at the outset. Carnegie gives an example of a customer who was refusing to pay a bill for an advertising campaign. The debt collector, instead of arguing, asked a series of questions that the customer could only answer yes to, gradually leading him to agree to pay the bill. The questions covered whether the campaign was worth it, if he'd like to do more business, and finally, if he wanted to resolve the outstanding payment to keep his good credit.
That's powerful psychology. What's next?
Principle 6. The safety valve in handling complaints. This means letting the other person do a great deal of the talking.
So, let them vent, essentially?
Precisely. Most people trying to win others over do too much talking themselves. Instead, ask them questions and let them tell you things. Don't interrupt, even if you disagree, because they won't pay attention to you while they still have ideas crying for expression. Carnegie uses the example of a sales representative who secured a large order for upholstery fabrics by letting the automobile manufacturer's purchasing agent talk extensively about his family and problems. The salesman patiently listened, which built trust and ultimately led to the order.
This is crucial in customer service and managing teams. Let them feel heard.
Principle 7. How to get cooperation. This is about letting the other person feel that the idea is his or hers.
Subtle influence. People are more committed to ideas they believe they originated.
Colonel Edward M. House, a close advisor to President Woodrow Wilson, was a master at this. He would often suggest an idea to Wilson, and days later, Wilson would present it as his own. House didn't care about credit. He wanted results. Carnegie himself used this when he was planning a fishing trip in New Brunswick. Instead of just sending him information, one camp owner sent him a list of people in his area who had used the camp and invited him to call them. This made Carnegie feel like he was discovering the best option himself.
That's really smart. It makes them feel empowered. What's Principle 8?
Principle 8. A formula that will work wonders for you. This is about honestly trying to see things from the other person's point of view.
Empathy is a recurring theme here, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Carnegie states, success in dealing with people depends on a sympathetic grasp of the other person's viewpoint. Dean Donham of the Harvard Business School said he would rather walk the sidewalk for 2 hours before an interview than step into an office without a clear idea of what he would say and what the other person was likely to answer based on their interests and motives. It takes time, but it avoids making enemies and gets better results.
Preparation and perspective-taking are key. What about number 9?
Principle 9. What everybody wants. This principle is about being sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires.
So, acknowledge and validate their feelings, even if you don't agree with their conclusion.
Exactly. Carnegie provides a powerful quote. I don't blame you one iota for feeling as you do. If I had been through all the painful experiences you have, I would undoubtedly feel just as you do. This acknowledges their feelings without necessarily agreeing with their actions. He tells the story of a difficult customer who refused to deal with a certain company. The salesman, instead of arguing, expressed understanding for the customer's frustration, acknowledging his past bad experiences. This opened the door for a new positive conversation.
That can instantly disarm someone who is upset or defensive. Principle 10.
Principle 10, an appeal that everybody likes. This is about appealing to the nobler motives.
People want to see themselves as good, ethical, and helpful, right?
Yes. JP Morgan once said that people usually have two reasons for doing something, one that sounds good and the real one. Carnegie advises appealing to the one that sounds good. He recounts how the head of a firm had a tenant who wanted to break his lease, which was against the rules. Instead of threatening, he appealed to the tenant's sense of fairness and integrity, explaining that the lease was a mutually agreed-upon contract, and breaking it would be dishonest. The tenant ended up staying and paying.
So, give them a reputation to live up to. What's Principle 11?
Principle 11. The movies do it, TV does it. Why don't you do it? This is about dramatizing your ideas.
Make it vivid and memorable.
Don't just state a fact. Make it come alive. For instance, if you're interviewing someone for a job, don't just tell them the company is growing. Show them charts, testimonials, and paint a picture of their future growth within the company. Carnegie shares a story of a cash register company that showed a store owner how much money he was losing every day by not using a new cash register, by drawing a large figure on a piece of paper and ripping it up, symbolizing the lost money. This visual impact was far more effective than just reciting numbers.
That's powerful. People remember stories and experiences more than dry facts. And the final principle in this part?
Principle 12. When nothing else works, try this. This is about throwing down a challenge.
A bit of healthy competition or a dare.
Yes, an appeal to the desire to excel. Charles Schwab, the steel magnate, had a mill where the men weren't meeting their production quotas. He asked the night shift foreman how many heats they made that day, then wrote the number on the floor in chalk. When the day shift came in, they asked what it meant, then erased it and wrote a higher number. The night shift came in and beat that. Soon, the mill became the most productive. Schwab said, "The way to get things done is to stimulate competition. Not in a mean way, but as a challenge." He quotes Harvey S. Firestone, founder of Firestone Tire and Rubber Company, who said, "I have never found that pay and pay alone would either bring together or hold good people. I think it was the game itself."
So, tap into people's innate desire for achievement. That's a great way to motivate. Part 3 is packed with actionable advice.
Now we're on to part 4. Be a leader, how to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment. This section is really about guiding and correcting others effectively.
This is where a lot of managers and parents struggle. How do you give feedback without making someone defensive? What's the first principle?
Principle 1. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. This sets a positive tone and makes the criticism, when it comes, easier to accept.
So, butter them up first, then hit them with the difficult news?
Not butter them up in a fake way. It has to be honest and sincere. Carnegie tells a story about a manager who wanted to talk to a new secretary about her poor typing, but started by praising her speed and accuracy, then gently moved to the need for improvement in attention to detail. By starting with praise, the secretary was much more receptive.
That makes perfect sense. It shows you value them before you point out a flaw. What's next?
Principle 2. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. Instead of saying but, use and.
Like, you did a great job, but you missed this.
No, precisely not but. That word negates the praise. Instead, say, "You did a great job, and if we could also focus on this next time, it would be perfect." Carnegie gives an example of someone whose praise for a person's work was immediately followed by but, which destroyed the goodwill and made the other person feel like the initial praise was just a setup.
That's a subtle but powerful distinction, and creates continuity, but creates a divide.
Principle 3. Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person. This shows humility and makes you relatable.
It humanizes you and makes the feedback feel less like an attack.
Yes. Carnegie shares a story about a father whose son, Dave, started smoking. Instead of scolding, the father talked about how he started smoking at Dave's age and how nicotine had gotten the best of him, leading to his irritating cough. He didn't forbid or warn, he just shared his own struggle, and Dave eventually stopped smoking.
That's very effective. It turns it into a shared learning experience. What's Principle 4?
Principle 4. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. This gives people a sense of autonomy and makes them feel part of the decision-making process.
So instead of do this, it's how do you think we should approach this?
Exactly. Charles Schwab often used this. Instead of telling his staff to do something, he would ask, "Don't you think it would be a good idea if we," or "Do you think that would work?" This approach encourages cooperation and makes people feel like their ideas matter, even if you're guiding them to your desired outcome. Another example is a manager who asked his team for suggestions on how to improve a difficult situation, leading to creative solutions and increased buy-in, rather than just dictating what needed to be done.
Much better for morale and results. Number 5,
Principle 5. Let the other person save face. Don't embarrass them or make them feel small.
this is about protecting their dignity.
When someone makes a mistake, criticizing them publicly or harshly can destroy their self-respect. Carnegie shares a story about General Electric, where a manager failed to greet a new worker. Instead of publicly scolding the manager, his superior spoke to him privately and simply stated that the company was a big family and that they liked to have everyone greet each other. This allowed the manager to correct his behavior without losing face. Another example is a company manager who had to demote an employee for poor performance. Instead of making it humiliating, he talked to the employee privately, explained the decision with respect, and offered support in a new role, allowing the employee to maintain his dignity.
That's a truly compassionate approach to leadership. What's Principle 6?
Principle 6. Praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise.
So, catch people doing something right and celebrate it.
This is about positive reinforcement. Instead of waiting for perfection, acknowledge progress. Carnegie gives an example of a shy boy named Chris in a crafts class. His teacher saw potential in him and, instead of focusing on his shyness, asked him if he wanted to be in the advanced class, making Chris feel incredibly important and capable. This encouragement helped Chris flourish.
It builds confidence and encourages continued effort. Principle 7.
Principle 7. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. If you want someone to improve in a certain area, tell them they already have that quality, and they'll strive to maintain it.
This is a classic psychological trick, but it works.
It's not a trick if it's sincere. It's about seeing the best in people and communicating that. Carnegie refers back to the teacher and Tommy. By telling Tommy he was a natural leader, she gave him a reputation to live up to, and he did. Another example is a mother whose child was doing poorly in school. Instead of reprimanding him, she told him she knew he was a smart and capable student, and she had confidence in him to improve, which motivated him to work harder.
It's about believing in them. What's Principle 8?
Principle 8. Use encouragement. Make the faults seem easy to correct. Don't make things seem impossible. Break them down and make them achievable.
So, provide hope and a clear path forward.
If you tell someone something is difficult, they're less likely to try. Carnegie tells a story about a father whose young son was struggling with a complex puzzle. Instead of telling him it was too hard, the father encouraged him by saying, "You're almost there, just a few more pieces," and gave him small, manageable hints, making the task seem easy and achievable. The boy eventually solved it and felt proud.
That's great for motivation, especially with challenging tasks. And the final principle?
Principle 9. Make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest. This ties back to arousing an eager want, but from a leadership perspective.
So, Make it appealing and beneficial for them.
Yes. Carnegie shares a story about a store manager who needed an employee to work overtime on a Saturday, which no one liked to do. Instead of simply ordering him, the manager explained that he was the only one capable of handling the specific task, making the employee feel indispensable and valued. The employee happily agreed. Another example is a manager who needed volunteers for a new project. Instead of just asking, he framed it as a unique opportunity for growth and learning new skills, appealing to the employee's ambition, and got many eager volunteers.
That's fantastic. It's about framing tasks in a way that aligns with their personal goals and desires.
George, we've covered so much ground today. From not criticizing and giving sincere appreciation to making others feel important and leading with encouragement.
It's truly amazing how these principles, despite being decades old, are still so incredibly relevant for anyone looking to improve their interactions, whether at work, with family, or just in daily life.
Absolutely. The core message of how to win friends and influence people is really about understanding others, empathizing, and acting with genuine interest and respect. It's about building bridges, not walls.
And it's not about being fake or manipulative. It's about being strategic in how you communicate and interact, but doing so from a place of genuine understanding and appreciation.
It truly can revolutionize your relationships and lead to a richer, fuller, happier life, just as Carnegie promised. I highly recommend picking up a copy and really trying to apply these principles daily.
Definitely. It's an action book, as Carnegie himself described it. For those interested in diving deeper into this book, remember to check the description for a link to purchase your own copy. And don't forget to share, like, and subscribe.
Thanks for joining me today, George.
Always a pleasure, Jess. And thank you all for listening to Long Story Spoken. We'll catch you next time.